Hi, Sam.
Hey, Michael.
You know the Winter Olympics that just happened, the Milano Cortina Olympics?
Yeah.
Of the little over 8 billion people on the planet, how many of them do you think engaged in some way with the Winter Olympics? So be that watching or listening to or just following online.
Well, I think it would be bold to be like all 8 billion people because not everyone has access to like internets or television. So we'll guesstimate like 1 billion people.
Good answer. According to research commissioned by the International Olympic Committee and published in February 2026, a whopping 2.6 billion people follow the Games. That's about 30% of the entire global population.
That's pretty unbelievable that that's even possible.
Yeah, and today we're going to be exploring just how the teams behind the scenes made this happen and diving into the network which allows spectators in person and fans around the world to join in with every moment of the action. I'm Michael Bird.
I'm Sam Jarrell.
And welcome to Technology Now from HPE. Well, we've talked about sports before on this show and even discussed the technology behind going to a game. But some events are a bit more than just a single game in a single stadium.
Right, because the Olympics, or in this case, the Winter Olympics earlier this year, were spread over not just multiple venues, but multiple cities too.
100%. And this presented all sorts of logistical challenges, from the physical hardware that had to be installed in pretty hostile conditions to the software keeping everything up and running on location, and even building infrastructure which could cope with the gargantuan quantities of data being transferred to allow the games to be broadcasted around the world.
So then, how did they do it?
Well, Milano Cortina was awarded the Winter Olympics back in 2019, so they had just 7 years to get everything up and running. And one of those who worked on it was Giuseppe Civale, Director of ICT Infrastructure and Venue Technologies, who I had the pleasure of interviewing recently. Now, to set the scene, the first thing he told me was about some of the networking challenges which come with an event at this sort of scale.
The network is normally something that the people doesn't perceive like something that is relevant for the evolution or the implementation of an event like the Olympics. But at the end of the day, the network is the nervous system that gives the possibility to the people that need to have this kind of service to share the information and to share the results. At the end of the day, why is it relevant, the network? It's relevant because first of all, the network is the tool by which the performance of the athletes should be deployed and distributed to the judge and to the people that have to know before should be maintained in an official way. And also is the infrastructure that was used by the TV broadcaster for capturing the images and the audio for preparing the product to deliver to their customer base around the world. The network is also really important because for implementing 20 days of game, you need to start to work 5, 6, 7 years before, and you have to organize thousands of people that are working together with tools that give them the opportunity to exchange information, to exchange activities, to coordinate their activities for arriving to the final results of deploying the Olympic networks. Because the real client of the Olympic Games is not only the people that are in presence looking the competition, but are the hundreds of millions of people that watching the TV, or the 3 billion of people that watched the opening ceremony last winter in Milano.
And I guess the thing with a network for a Winter Olympic Games is that it's not just in one location.
No.
And it's also not just in a city. We're talking up mountains.
Yes, because the Italian Olympic Games was the first Olympic game by which was applied the so-called distributed Olympic model. So we spread over the 80% of the Italian territory in Milano and the Alpine venues, the competition venues for the Milano Cortina Olympic Games. We had the need to reach each of these venues in a very stable way with a connectivity that has to be implemented with all the full characteristics of redundancy, differentiation of path, and the highest level of technology, because it's not possible to leave to the case the opportunity for manage an event so important like the games.
Can you give a sense of how distributed from one site to the furthest site?
From Milano to Cortina or Bormio in Valtellina or Predazzo, I listed 4 of the places by which were implemented the competition venues. There are more or less 400 kilometers by road. And each of them, even if they are near than within the distances between Milano and one of them, we're talking about 200 or 300 kilometers or at least 5 hours of driving, because in the mountain road, you have to be very careful and not so speedy.
And within cities, you can imagine how you manage connectivity. There's already fibres already there.
In Milano, that we had the location for the ice sports, except the curling that was in Cortina, we had the need to distribute and to deliver dark fiber from the competition venues to the IBC, the International Broadcasting Center of OBS, that collected the audio-video contribution for preparing the TV product distribution. Because one of the things that normally the people forgot is that in reality, you have to implement 2 separate networks. One that is the so-called broadband broadcast contribution network is fully dedicated to the broadcaster. And the second is so-called Olympic network, is dedicated to any other customer base that you have to serve. When we spoke about customer base, are not included the final customer or the people that went to the venues for looking the competition. We are discussing about athletes, Olympic family, official timekeeper, and the supplier and the partners that supports us for implementing the games. So we had to implement 2 different types of infrastructure, and normally they are nearby but separated in terms of fiber connectivity. So 2 couple of fibers for the broadcaster, 2 couple of fibers for the Olympic network, and it never had to be installed in the same piping, and have to be also differentiated in terms of path when you will connect with the end user premises equipment.
How did you do the connectivity up mountains? Did you run fiber there, or was it
in the
wirelessly?
mountains? We were forced to deploy, starting from scratch, more or less 500 kilometers of digging, 600 in reality, for deploying 1,600 kilometers of new fiber. Instead, HP, former Juniper networks, provided directly all the active equipment.
So 400 kilometers, I imagine thousands of different network devices, access points, switches, etc.
We installed 5,000 access points.
So a fair few.
We had to deploy and to deliver globally 1,800 active equipment, including router, firewalls, and other equipment into the venues for connecting over that the main different venues, at which you have to add over 60 secondary facilities dedicated for following logistic activities or transportation or any other support activities for the functioning of the Olympic Games.
And what sort of bandwidth are we talking about here?
We transferred globally, separately on both networks, over 2.5 terabytes of content in our networks. And the bandwidth is managed directly by Juniper or HP network equipment.
You mentioned firewall, so clearly security was probably quite an important element here. How do you make sure that the network was secure?
We decided to have in each of our main venue firewalls that were installed for protecting autonomously also what happened in each of the venue. And we decided also to apply the rule that if something dangerous was identified, the venue has to be disconnected from the rest of the network, and until the sanity check was cleared, were not introduced again into the infrastructure. Fortunately, we didn't have this kind of problem, but we are prepared to manage in this way this kind of occurrence.
And this was a self-driving network?
Yes.
And how was your experience with a self-driving network?
Self-driving network for us was a really good experience. It was one of the characteristics by which we choose the HPE solution. Because with the requirement that we received by the International Olympic Committee that we have to have an infrastructure as much as possible resilient, mission critical, and as to be prepared to support exceptional situation, either from the weather point of view, then from the workload, at the end of the day, with the normal rules of designing applied unto 5 years ago, was not possible to deploy this kind of infrastructure. So you have to bet only for using of the AI, and using the AI means that you have to bet on the self-configurating and self-managed IP-based infrastructure.
And so do you think the infrastructure lessons you learned, is this now the gold standard for what a Winter Olympics should look like?
What we implemented was something that no one before us expected would be implemented and could become in a so short time a normal requirement. The success of the Milano Cortina Olympic Games at the end of the day increased the threshold of the request, of the requirement. And so for the people that came after us and have to implement the new edition of the games, they have to face this kind of comparison. So it's normal from the Milano Cortina edition that an AI-based infrastructure, self-configurating and self-managing, will be required by the organization.
I'd love to understand sort of the legacy, because Olympics is 2 weeks. What happens after? I mean, you've run fibre, you've learned lessons. I mean, does that infrastructure stay? Does it go?
We decided to have a good health approach for managing the future after the game. All the activities and all the equipment that we used were engaged with the formula of pay-per-use. For example, the supplier of the fibre, we decided to pay for the usage of this infrastructure that was tailored on their backbone for the time necessary for the games, and after they will decide to maintain or not this kind of links. In the larger part, they maintain it because they found new business customers that have this kind of bandwidth need that could be served by them. For active equipment, we had the opportunity to resell at the end of the day this equipment, and so this equipment will be used in other configuration, some in other part of the world, and some will remain in Italy, because there are some clients that want to use this kind of equipment also for their network, and some of these active devices will remain in the same location by which they served for the Olympic Games.
Because you sort of prove that it works in a stadium or wherever. It's like, well, this works, let's maintain this. Yeah. Giuseppe, thank you so much for joining us on Technology Now.
Thank you. I'm honored to participate here and very happy to be here to tell this success story, because at the end of the day, this is a real success story of technology that doesn't involve only the technology, but it involves the evolution of the way to implement the games.
Wow.
I love stories like this. I love hearing how our technology is being used in innovative ways. The distance between Milano and Cortina, as an example, was about 400 kilometres, 250-ish miles. The sort of distributed nature of the infrastructure is staggering. And also, mountains aren't like particularly hospitable places for technology equipment, I wouldn't have thought.
When he said that they dug on the mountain, all I could picture was like a bunch of guys up on a mountain physically digging into the snow for hours on end to maybe lay down fiber and put an access point on it. That's crazy to me.
The thing that I'm really struck by is, I think he said this is the first Winter Olympics using the distributed Olympic model. So it's not all in one city, it's across multiple cities. And so that just brings even more complication, because it's not like something goes down, a network engineer can just investigate the problem by driving over to the venue. If it takes 5 hours to get there, that's the whole day, which leads really nicely onto the self-driving network part of the story.
That's true. I found it fascinating that he was talking about the self-driving networks as basically an imperative because they need it to be the highest resiliency possible. And he's right. This is one of those types of things. When I'm actively watching somebody ski down a mountainside, I'm not thinking about the network. But if my picture were to go away or the broadcast were to be interrupted, then I would only be thinking about the network, and 2 billion other people would only be thinking about the network. So it's like one of those types of things where if they're doing it right, you're never thinking about it or noticing it. If they're doing it wrong, it's the only thing you can think about and notice.
I think the fact that Giuseppe said that AI-based self-configurating, self-managing networks are likely to be the sort of gold standard, like the requirement for networks for these sorts of sports events, because they are just so complicated and they have to be resilient.
Yes. And I also really appreciated your question towards the end of everything about like, okay, well, what happens after the closing ceremony? Because in the past, people have heard about post-Olympics, building structures are left behind, areas are not left in the best condition. Stuff just gets left over and it's not always necessarily taken care of. So I was personally quite fascinated to learn about how they're able to be creative with whether or not stuff stays deployed. And then the stuff that does stay there has a purpose.
I think the phrase they use is legacy, like the legacy of an Olympic Games is really important. And I think most people think about buildings, don't they? But actually, they built this network, they proved it works. So in some instances, leave the network in. In other instances where it's not required, recycle that equipment, give it to another organisation. So I think as a business, I think it's something that we think about a lot. And certainly our customers are certainly thinking about it, aren't they? Now, Sam, I do have an important question for you because we are, after all, discussing the Winter Olympics. What is your favourite winter sport, either watching or doing?
Oh, gosh. Well, I grew up in Texas, so winter sports are not something that, like, I often thought about or even, like, really experienced. Probably like snowshoeing. It's basically hiking, just put on, you know. I want to know what yours is.
Mine, well, I like snowboarding. I go snowboarding somewhat regularly. And my favourite sport to watch the Olympics is the snowboard cross, which is essentially 4 people, I think it's 4, maybe more, on snowboards going up and down this sort of undulating course with jumps and very tight corners. I think that is one of the most impressive. And I quite enjoy watching. I would always watch snowboard cross if it was on. I did ask Giuseppe this question as well, so let's quickly hear his answer.
My favorite Winter Olympics sport is the figure skating.
Really?
Yes. One of the sports by which you can appreciate how is the capability of the human performer to express the maximum of his sensibility.
Okay. That brings us to the end of Technology Now for this week. Thank you to our guest, Giuseppe Civale. And of course, to our listeners, thank you so much for joining us.
If you've enjoyed this episode, please do let us know. Rate and review us wherever you listen to episodes. And if you want to get in contact with us, do make sure to send us an email to technologynow@hp.com. And don't forget to subscribe so you can listen first every week. Technology Now is hosted by Sam Jarrell and myself, Michael Bird, and this episode was produced by Harry Lampert and Eva Higginbotham, with production support from Alicia Kempson-Taylor, Nick Damarel, Becky Bird, Mary Lee, Alyssa Mitri, and Janessa Ayosh. Our theme music was composed by Greg Hooper.
Our social editorial team is Rebecca Wissinger, Judy Ann Goldman, and Jacqueline Green. And our social media designers are Alejandra Garcia and Ambar Maldonado.
Technology Now is a Fresh Air production for Hewlett-Packard Enterprise. We'll see you at the same time, the same place next week. Cheers.
Bye, y'all!